How's everybody doing this morning?
Quite well. How's it going for you, Brandon?
It's okay. It's okay. Uh, Although it's a long day ahead, so
Oh yeah. Been using Navigate. It's been very helpful.
great. Love to hear that. By the way, just as an aside, as odd as this sounds, I feel as though, I'm all about transparency here. If you guys see me with a bead of sweat coming down my forehead, it's not because you guys are making me nervous. It's literally because the heat is it's unbearable here and the air conditioning is not working. So Uh, I guess they do call it the hot seat for a reason.
You should at least take your sweater off.
I know, but then you guys are got to see my little girlish figure, and I don't want to do that to you. You guys don't deserve that. Yeah, it's
No, you don't deserve that.
it's I like being under pressure here. All right. The pressure cooker. I have so many different ways to describe this right now. I'm on fire this morning, literally. Um, no. But as everybody joins, conscious of the time, 8:32. Um, I am just going to kind of start doing kind of setting the stage because it's important so we can move fast through the material. Some of you are probably, if you do reflect back on where we started, or if you don't, you might be noticing that there's a kind of theme, or as I like to call it, a story arc that we are following, and it's done on purpose, right? When we went into this real estate prospecting track, I wanted to kind of have uh, some sort of a linear logical flow to what we were doing, whereas last track it was just kind of like disparate. Like here's one thing about circle prospecting, here's another thing about open house, and it just was like, okay, like this is great, but like, how am I ordering this? How do I think about this? And it just wasn't linear. So I really wanted to just kind of have this session be about clearly the foundational stuff and then building um, on certain things, but also listening to some of the feedback that you guys have been giving me, which has been hugely informative about kind of where some of your pain points lie. So, listening to a lot of you in this session will be talking a lot about channel strategy. Last session, we talked about communication, effective messaging. We'll do more of that. This is about how do we select the right channels? What are those channels and how do we think about them? How do we allocate dollars across them? How do you make that decision? And it's exciting because, and I don't want to preview the next session, but from talking to you, thinking about some of my own struggles, and I don't say lack of understanding, but just like frustrations, anxiety. I want to have this session lead into understanding this kind of digital ecosystem, which everybody talks about. Well, we got to do digital marketing. It's used to mean something, now it means nothing. And so I want to do a session to kind of demystify that for you guys. How do we think about it? What does it encompass? What does it entail? What are some smart solutions? What is the old way of doing it versus the new way? So this is all leading towards how do we choose? How do we communicate? How do we choose the channels we communicate and think about them? How do we understand all of this noise here and make sense of it so you can do effective marketing to reach your target? So I just wanted to kind of set the stage here for where we are going. It's largely driven from where we have been, but you guys will start to see uh, a lot of this stuff start to click if it hasn't clicked so far, and just a lot of this kind of confusion you might have about how to think about things. Hopefully, be not confusing anymore. So, with that said, I am going to kick off this presentation. So let me share my screen. This is always the most interesting part. The technology CEO who can't seem to figure out technology, right? All right. Let me put this on. Let me open this back up. You guys can see my screen? Yeah. Thumbs up. Cool. Uh, all right. All right. So I kind of just previewed what we're going to be doing today. But again, this journey, it's really important. The last thing I'll say before I'm not going to repeat myself again is I don't know. I am hoping that you guys receive these presentations after the call. This is a lot to take in. This is more about just listening. But even though your time might be limited, and I know it's just a lot going on, it's worth just sitting and reflecting. And if you're like me, sometimes even printing this stuff out, I just do better when it's a physical copy as opposed to just looking at it. I retain it more. And just some of the content in here. I know when you guys are looking at it, it kind of seems like an eye chart. And it's not how I normally present, but I just want you guys to just have the background for some of this stuff, not just these high level points that just don't have any substance. So again, we talked about this arc. We started with shifting the mindset, property-led intelligence. We talked about the importance of goal defining, understanding your market. We then went into a session around reading property signals, identifying what those breadcrumbs are, how marrying property intelligence and owner intelligence. The byproduct is motivation, right? We got to have the tool to spot those things and to do it more efficiently than the competition. And then what are the clues? What are we looking for, right? The next session, which was last week, we talked about, hey, it's great to identify what those clues are, identify a motivation. And while that person could be interested in what you are selling, they're not interested right now. So now how do we marry the insight that you found with the urgency to act now, right? And it's crazy because not that this was done on purpose. I was on LinkedIn this morning, early morning, and somebody posted something around the Big Beautiful Bill. Now, I haven't really done a deep dive into the Big Beautiful Bill, but there's a couple things that have been coming out, which I found quite surprising. One, if you are pulling money out of a company and investing money into something else, kind of like a 1031 exchange, you get a tax break. You don't get taxed on that capital gain, if you will. So not applicable for this group, but something of interest. But another one that came up this morning was something around this Airbnb and people investing in non-owner properties to run short-term rentals. And Trump in the Big Beautiful Bill have put a huge tax break for doing this. So I'll forward this to you guys afterwards. I don't want to go into like the nitty-gritty of it, but like this is another thing that is happening where you might be talking to your client around, hey, there's an opportunity to purchase non-owner properties, second homes, if you will, want to rent them. And here's a compelling reason as to why you should act now because of the tax break they may be getting. So that is you as an advisor aware of what's happening in the market, talking to your client you may have worked with in the past. Here's an opportunity. Prospecting a buyer group around the opportunity to buy. Whatever it is you have information because you're in the market and in the know and want to help people identify a strategy that could help them save on their tax liability. Right? So that is a perfect example of what we're talking about here. Right. So I'll send the information to the group and so they can kind of see it for themselves. But like this is some of the things that are happening around us, which you may not be aware of. I certainly wasn't. And I worked for 3-4 years in that business and I was unaware of it. So you'd think I would be, but I wasn't. So we never know. And so it's a great example of kind of just, again, seeing an insight. Here's an opportunity in the market, bringing an urgency to it. Now we have to move. Today will be about delivering that message effectively by choosing the right channel. So channel strategy is incredibly important. As you guys know, or maybe don't, I spent several years working for one of the largest consumer packaging goods in the world and goods companies in the world. And we had a huge budget. And so we would work with a media company, several different agencies, and we choose what is the most effective channel we want to distribute our messages in. And not every channel is the same. Some channels work harder for others. Certain channels you want to communicate differently because they're more about an emotive or emotional connection. Others are about function, form, and utility, right? And what that means is an example, again, when I was working in the liquor business, we would message a certain way when we would be communicating in a bar. We would be messaging a certain way when we would be communicating at the shelf. right? If you're walking down the supermarket, function, form, and utility in the supermarket, that's how people make decisions. Emotion, what does that brand mean for me when you're at the bar? Different communications, different formats, different channels. Most people who are just going about their business don't really think about this, right? And so they think about a channel like email, they think about a channel like social, digital display, and they take a one size kind of fits all to that specific channel, probably from what they heard, probably from some quote unquote expert who really doesn't even know what they're talking about. And they wonder why they're missing all day long. So, like I said, all channels aren't built the same. Some channels are more effective in certain markets. I know some of you have asked me before, hey, Brandon, if you were me, what would your marketing mix be? Couldn't tell you. And if somebody's telling you what it is without asking the right questions, that's the person I would not listen to. Your marketing mix and where you choose to spend, both in dollar, frequency, and type of communication, is largely dependent on who you're communicating to and what you know about them, how they respond to it, if they respond at all to it. So for some of you, I've kind of fleshed out some playbooks and some marketing plans based on the information you provided me around where you were farming, and is largely based on that, what we know about that audience that you are talking to and what they respond well to. So some of the things that you guys want to look at is budget, right? What's the cost effectiveness ROI? So in some of the conversations, we've talked about running kind of print material, postcards, whether they be pamphlets or I forget what the name is people were calling them, but we call them pamphlets for now, sending them out. And there's just a lot of material that we thought and we think is really useful that the audience wants to hear. We spend a ton of money on it and we're not getting the result, right? So do we look at the channel and say it's not working? Maybe not. Do we look at what we are running in that channel and say, hey, can this message be optimized, or can we find something that actually is a bit more sticky, which is kind of what we talked about last week, right? Using a postcard, not trying to use that postcard to do all of the heavy lifting for you, but perhaps changing the communications, setting the stage to create a moment where you can actually be most effective, where whatever it is you do, your special sauce, right, comes to light and you can close. Frequency requirements, right? How often do we want to pump this stuff? Somebody told me last week there was an agent that I think either was fined some crazy amount because they sent a text. They sent a text to someone $250,000, something crazy like this, and it was like a meme, and everybody was talking about it last week. Clearly, it was done by mistake, but that is an example of messaging too much. But finding the right frequency, uh, also marrying that with what it is that you're communicating. So something you might be saying might require a higher frequency because there's a deadline looming, right? So maybe a new tax ordinance or assessment coming due, or maybe something that you can take advantage of that like has a finite date of expiry, something to where it's like, hey, the reason why I'm messaging you is because we're running up on a deadline. Certain things are just, hey, I'm doing a pulse check, just want to see if this is, if one, did you read my previous one? Did you get it? Why this is important for you now? And, depending on who you are actually messaging to, you might want to do those every week, every 2 weeks. Ultimately, you'll find the right cadence, and the cadence is largely dependent on kind of the channel that you communicate with. If you're like me, I get texts from people, I get LinkedIn messages from people. Hey, did you see my last thing? And it's literally once a week. And I get agitated every single time because I just literally haven't gotten to it. And while it may be important to them, they haven't built the sense of urgency for me. So they literally are just saying the same thing over and over and over again. And my response is, I'm good. Please take me off your list. Right. And that is largely due because they haven't put all these building blocks together. So they're reaching out to me. Sure. The only way you can convert is if you start a conversation, right? That's just like the building blocks. You can't get to the outcome unless you have the right input. Great. They made conversation. Two, they're saying the same thing week in and week out, and they're not giving me a reason to come to the table. So now I look at them as like, you're super annoying as opposed to really helpful and carving out time for them. So think about your inboxes when you get flooded, as I'm sure you do as agents, because your information is public and people are trying to sell you lead lists, this, that, and the third. They're on LinkedIn telling you, oh, you need to do this. We cannot. Everybody is trying to contact you. Some people make it through the gauntlet. You as the gatekeeper, others don't. The ones that make it through, what did they do? The ones that don't make it through, they're sitting in the graveyard. What didn't they do? And there's a reason why. We just don't think about it. Start to think about that and think about that, how that influences your communication. Personal strengths, right? The things that you do well. Everyone in this age of AI, and I've mentioned this before, and I know Sharad teaches the class on it, which is, funny. And while it's not meant to discredit that, it's meant to contextualize it. Because sometimes we kind of simplify this stuff. AI is great. Don't get me wrong. I use it a ton. It is helpful. It is an accomplice. It is not the answer. The thing that makes what I feel makes me an effective salesperson, not a great one, effective, is my ability to sprinkle in a bit of my personality, humor, self-deprecation. I don't know it all, and that's okay. We're learning it together. So there's a humility that's there. And all those things should come out, right? The person who knows all the answers is picture perfect. Every word is precise. It may sound great, but I'm looking for human beings. I'm looking for connection. I'm looking for something that's real and authentic, someone who's meeting me where I'm at, as I like to say. And sometimes your humility, the things you do well, your ability to build close connections with people, make people feel comfortable, that again, may not be caught in a postcard, a pamphlet, a digital display ad, but are better served for a one-to-one moment or a one-to-many moment where it's you meeting people, being with them eye to eye, kind of like a session like this or in person. So think about what your gifts are, what you bring to the table, where people have told you, hey, you're really good at that. Or when you're speaking to people, what they respond to, what they smile when you actually talk to them. Do you see that? That is a signal. That's the body telling you a signal, right? Like, hey, you're really good at that. And even ask some of your clients if you don't know. And I think it's actually a good thing to do. Sometimes I ask people, and I've asked some of you guys this, like, what are the things I'm doing well? What are the things I'm not doing? And you can get a lot of information. If you can sit there and take the heat, both the good and the bad, you can learn a lot about what people are responding to, and what you should be doing with higher frequency. Time investment. This is critical. We talked about tools like Navigate, one tool, certainly several tools. How do we find quicker ways to distribute communication out? And technology as something that allows for the right frequency and sequencing of this communication, and maybe changing the message, but you not having to manually do it every single time. A lot of frustration that agents experience, those that I've talked to, both you guys and outside of Compass, have said the manual process, like, I just can't do things efficiently. I'm having to do these manual things and it takes up a ton of time and I'm not getting the result I want. So I'm spending money on it. It's a lot of effort and the return on my investment is low. So it's about the tool selection, right? How can we find efficiencies there? How do we create opportunities to where if you do spend time, it's on the stuff that drive value for your business? Those one-to-one engagements drive a higher value, right? The postcard might be the conduit to create that value. So how do we not spend a ton of time on the postcard, the creation of the asset? How do we find quick ways to get that out there with the right message, to spend more time doing the things that convert, getting in front of people, building communities, bringing thought partners in, hosting sessions? That's what's going to help you convert. And when you find the tools that can actually identify prospects, understand them, locate the breadcrumbs, identify the motivation, and connect with them faster than the competition, the faster you get to that connection moment, with the assumption that you do connect, the more time you can spend with those clients, building those relationships, building that relationship capital, not chasing, spraying and praying, wondering why it's not working, being precise, getting in front of them, having more conversations and moving the needle, getting more appointments. And lastly, it's targeting this audience behavior, right? We got to make sure we know, one, who we're for. So whatever we are saying, making sure that who we're saying it to, they're likely going to respond to it, right? And you've heard me talk about this. It's important to know who you're not for, and it's also important to know who you are for. We don't take the time to do that, which is why we waste money sending it to everybody, hoping that we can find somebody who's like, oh yeah, like I'm interested, which is great, just not the new way that we should think about marketing, right? Attribution, if you guys don't know what that means, that's where are these people coming from, which channels are driving traffic to me, right? And also, where do I want to be spending dollars, making sure that I'm picking up and talking to the people that most that will resonate, or where my message will resonate, sorry, or where my message will be most effective. So that is understanding who you're going after, which is why I always talk about this precision. So every dollar you spend is working hard for you. When I was doing marketing before we started to have all technology involved with it, I was distinctly remember I was working for Johnny Walker, and we would spend all of this money across all of these different channels and have zero idea if any of it was working. Yeah, we'd see our brand improve. We see maybe our profit dollars, our volume, our value improve. It's great. I had no idea what was actually driving that growth. So there's a lot of waste there. Had I known, which we do know now, I would have been like, hey, here are all my channels. Here's the attribution, who's actually, where traffic is actually coming from. We should allocate more dollars to this because this is actually getting me a new customer. And the linkage to conversion is much higher. 10 years ago, weren't able to do that. Today, we can, and there's no excuse to not know how to do this. And we'll talk more about how to do that in subsequent sessions. So, overview of all these prospecting channels. There is a lot out there, and everyone will tell you, oh, this one's most effective. Some people will shy away from some, like cold calling, because they just have a fear of it. I understand it. I get it. Sometimes that's effective, sometimes it's not. There's the texting, there's email, there's voicemail drops, there's door knocking. You know them all. You've probably done them all. And I am not here to tell you that's not effective. Again, each of those channels can be effective, but it's certainly not a one size fits all. And there's certainly the investigation about, well, who am I doing it to make sure that my tactic, if you will be most effective and I'll get a higher response rate. So for me, again, have I done cold calling? Sure. Is it a abrupt and jarring sort of process? 100%. It's where I cut my teeth doing it. I feared it. I was like, oh my God, they say no, I'm a bad person. They're saying I am terrible. No, they are not. They're just saying they are not interested in what you want. Moving on. Right. So a lot of that fear we have is because we think a no says something about ourselves and we run away from it. Right. So you have to develop that callus. Right. So in some markets, that's really effective. If you're doing a volume play and trying to touch as many people, that might be your strategy. Certainly not one that I would do and waste a lot of time. I'm not saying that it's bad, just not one that I invest a ton of time in. I like to actually do more face-to-face communication, but again, it's difficult to scale that. Right. So that's why you use certain things that do get you reach and communication scale to set the stage for something more personal. Door knocking is one of my preferred methods of outreach. Again, it is very tough to scale, but the impact, the conversion for the number that you do for me is higher. But we talked about in certain communities, like I live in Beverly Hills, especially in Bel Air in these areas, you can't door knock. It's behind a gate, not an effective strategy. Certain areas, people don't want to come to the door. That makes a lot of sense, right? So you have to know your market. You have to know what's possible, and choose a strategy that you think could be effective. Social media is one that tends to get getting a lot of people's attention, and peek underneath the hood. these are conversations I'm having about my business right now, right? Don't have a ton of budget, but what's a channel where I know my customer, real estate agents, might be engaging with, where a highly visual medium with a compelling call to action might be able to drive people to a landing page if I hang a lead magnet, which we talked about last week. If I dangle that out there and direct them somewhere, but it's me communicating, right? And so that in my business, I've seen as be highly effective because I know my audience as realtors who are on Instagram looking at beautiful inventory, they there's high dwell time there. It's a medium that they spend time on. That's an effective channel for me. Facebook, which is another uh, channel, if you will, maybe not as effective for me. It's tough to figure out who's actually hanging there. So maybe I don't want to invest in that. YouTube, still to be determined. But if I do something on YouTube, it's different type of content. So as you think about your business, it's you as a brand. It's what you are selling as part of your brand. It's your knowledge about either your market, about what's happening in the macro market, a point of view you might have, an interesting insight that people aren't aware of. All of these things are in your toolkit, whether you realize them or not. And your job is to identify the right channel to place these assets in. And I'll explain to you what that means. As a realtor, if I have a listing, I want to inform people about a listing that I might have, right? You could use a channel like Zillow, which is an aggregator, if you will, right? They're a distributor of your listing to an audience, so you can get traffic there, and it's effective, but it is a costly channel. I've heard agents spend upwards of $100,000 a month to be on that channel. But you have to realize you're spending all that money and you're getting a lot of looky lures, a lot of window shoppers. And so there's a lot of waste there. So costly channel, is it really effective? Some will say yes, some will say no. But no, the type of people who are showing up aren't all buyers, and it could be a waste of time. So you could be spending a lot of time not getting a lot of impact from that channel. You could, as if you had a listing, choose channels like running something on let's just say a digital display ad. Let's say using a postcard talking about your open house or that your home was just listed, right? Visual asset, sending it out, not as disruptive as others because it's depending on the other person to engage with it, but it is a mail channel that you are using to do that, right? People do this. This should not be surprising if you guys are all doing it right now. There are other ways, which we'll talk about next week, which are really exciting, which some realtors don't even know are even possible to access for them. And one such channel is connected TV. And imagine a world where if you had a listing or you wanted to build your brand and raise awareness around it, where you could run a 30-second commercial, which I know some of you are like, who has money for that? Actually, not even expensive to do. And that is a highly disruptive channel that is available for realtors that hasn't been made. A lot of people aren't aware of it. It's not been made public that you guys can access. And while that might be not a channel for everyone, for maybe a younger demographic, that might work. But again, that's knowing kind of your audience. The point being is that there's all these different places that you can place content and assets that you have, and they all work differently for you. If you were doing thought leadership pieces, if you had a point of view, had a podcast, whatever it is, YouTube, fantastic channel for that. Some people, and surprisingly, I found when I talk to a lot of agents, don't use LinkedIn. And I just think it's a big, big mistake. If I'm honest with you, for me personally, LinkedIn's probably the channel out of all of these that I've mentioned that I'm on the most because of the channel filled with working professionals, likely people who look like you, likely your target. They engage with it because the type of content coming across there is business related, transaction related. Um, and people are there to make connections and spot opportunities. And whether we realize it or not, sometimes our own personal LinkedIn page is our own personal website if you don't have one, to where you can put all of your activity on there, right? The things you've sold, what's listed, an open house, right? You can use this channel to really set the stage and build a community, but also build your presence and authority. And so when thinking about this kind of ecosystem, it's not about, oh my God, I got to be on every single one and spread yourself thin. So you got to be on the right ones that you know fit with who your audience is and making sure you have the right type of content that they expect to engage with in that channel. If I was doing Instagram, I certainly wouldn't waste the Instagram with long form content when I know people aren't there to consume long form content. It's snap content. So short snippets, right? Highly visual, get you to take an action. YouTube, they're there for long form content. So again, don't feel that you have to digest all this now. We'll go into sessions next week and talk more about this, but every single one of these channels works differently for you, and just understanding the value and how you communicate is half the battle. This is kind of a little bit more about it. I won't go into this slide, but this is just a quick thing for you guys to take away with understanding how to think about these channels: texting, mailers, social ads, cold calling, what we just talked about. But what I can tell you right now that is, and some of you might know this, but it is becoming more and more prevalent, especially with brands, direct to consumer brands, is not about using these channels to actually sell whatever product that you're selling in that channel in that moment. It's about using these channels to get tacit permission to continue the conversation. And it's incredibly important. And I want to double click on what that means, because some people hear and be like, oh yeah, I get it, but I just want to make sure everybody understands. In this new kind of shift in marketing, where we have gone from, hey, I got a message and my sales effort is about communicating my product to you in that moment and converting in that moment. We run the risk of it being too much for the user or the consumer to handle, so they don't make a decision. It being not the right time, it being overbearing, and consumers run away. The shift has been, hey, instead of trying to sell you my product and using this moment to get everything across about why my product right now is what you need to purchase in this moment, and then being surprised when we can't convert. The first step in actually the conversion process is having a conversation, which I mentioned before. And if you start to think about these channels a little bit differently, so the barrier for engagement isn't as high, and think about them as, hey, I have something interesting to share. I found you. I think this message is for you. I would love to be able to talk to you more about these type of messages, these type of themes, these type of opportunities. Can I get your information? And once you can get the information from them, that to me is the first conversion. You can get their information. Now you're building an audience, and you can communicate with them knowing that they are interested in what you are sending because they've told you. They weren't, they wouldn't have done that. So now you have permission, and it's how you use that permission, how you wield it, if you will, to drive to your intended outcomes. So I know it's not as, oh my God, I'm in it, I get it, it's right now, is the immediate, which was we literally thread meat, we get obsessed with. I have to have it right now because this is too long. I urge each of you to resist that temptation and think about your message and how to use these channels, not to convert on the sell, but to convert on how can I have a conversation with you? So last week we said, hey, using a postcard, creating an opportunity, using a QR code, having that QR code go to a landing page, they fill out information on that landing page. It's merchandised in such a way where it's in your environment. You can have your listings here, a little bit of story about you here, but it's in your world. They're filling out the information that matters to you, clicking submit. Now you have an audience, and now you can keep talking to this audience about all these different things. And if you ask the right questions on that intake form, you know what things they might be interested in. Looking to buy, looking to sell, looking for short-term rental opportunities, looking for 1031 exchanges, and you start to segment so you know which communication you send to them. This is the thoughtful marketing, not just, oh my God, I got this budget and I see this thing and I just got to do this and there it is, which is what a lot of us do and why we get frustrated. So it's just having a plan, thinking about, again, who you are for and being really precise with your audience, the right message, the right place, the right time, and all with trying to get information to create a conversation, to continue that conversation. And I put this matrix kind of together just to show you a little bit about those different types of channels and what you can expect, right? From a cost perspective, time investment, scalability. I think that's the big thing here. Many people are like, well, how can I reach people at scale? Which is great. I want you guys to care less about scalability and more about the fit, reaching the right person. It's not about volume, it's about value of communication. And that response rate that you'll get should be much, much higher. And here's some of your best practices across these channels, right? So we know email, sending these long, drawn out emails. I get them all the time. I can't even literally read past the third line. I'm just like, okay, what's the red meat here? Yeah, I was watching a news channel last night, and I felt so bad for this pundit on there who clearly was trying to communicate this point that she had worked so hard to just get across. And here was her moment. And she literally didn't stick the landing because it took forever to get to her point. She lost the room. I stopped listening. The people around her stopped listening, and she got railroaded. Felt really bad. But that was the perfect example of she didn't understand her audience. And while everything might be worthwhile and it's all right, it doesn't have to be all right now. The pacing of this communication, the setting the stage. Right? These are things that are important. So the email doesn't have to do everything for you. It could set up something else. The text, same thing. Social media, the same. You know, avoiding filters. This is, a really interesting one. The generic chat GBT stuff, whether it's an AI bot, some of us, maybe not all of us, have dealt with one. It's too scripted, too perfect. It's not personalized. I feel like I'm a number, a social security number, not actually a client. We tend to not gravitate towards that. We run away from it and have bad feelings about that. Those things are really important, right? So one, you're going to get flagged if stuff's generic. So maintain a level of personalization whenever you communicate. And if you're communicating channels like in email, make sure it's, you're not sending a whole bunch of links, which aren't necessarily, you'll get flagged for spam, but maybe aren't necessarily welcome. That could be overwhelming. Choosing your words carefully to where they're not just cookie cutter boilerplate like everybody else can send them, those things tend to get flagged because they give the appearance of just mass spam emailing. So all of these things are just, I'm pointing them out because personalization matters. Uh, that's where you actually can cut through. And I know that there's this temptation to, I reached or I sent something out to this many people, and that's like a big win in our world. It's not effective. And if you look at the results, most times you aren't actually seeing any. So while it might make you feel warm and good inside, what's the point, right? If you're not getting to your outcome. So some of you might have heard me say on some of these calls, right? We love beautiful communication. We love to tell everybody about all these different things as if we are, writing a Pulitzer. And if you are, congratulations. But if I'm not mistaken, all of you are here to close more business and to convert. And so we got to do the things that give you the best chance at doing that. Right? That's the end goal. Cadence planning, we talked a little bit about that, right? How do we email with the right cadence? How do we what we're saying, the content of what we're saying, there's might be a different cadence because again, there could be something that is looming around the corner that you need to act on. Being consistent. This is something I didn't mention before, but that is key. And I think a lot of people, including myself, we get caught up in just our day to day, right? Oh, I wanted to do this, but I got pulled away from this business activity, which I had to prioritize. And that makes sense. So when we talk about using technology and things of that nature, here's a great way where all that manual work, which, sometimes we have to make these tough trade-offs and decisions in support of growing our business. We might use a technology to create efficiencies that automate the scheduling of it, not necessarily the content, but the scheduling of it to make sure that is consistently done. And there's GBTs that help do that for you. And that's we'll talk more about that in subsequent weeks as well. How do we use AI to do the scheduling and the sequencing of some of this stuff? How do we choose to use in the ecosystem? How do we book in certain things? A postcard with a door knock, right? Complementary tactics in a direct sort of channel, right? So within the channel, you can do things that actually have a bigger impact if you marry them together rather than just one thing by itself. And then the sequencing, right? Once you make contact, what is your order of operations, order of engagement operations, if you will, right? If we have no response in this channel, like I said before, do we try a different channel that actually can leverage this here and say, hey, you might not have seen, or you might have heard, or like I sent something here. I was doing that to get your attention for this thing. But now since I have you, let's have a conversation. Certain channels do better with escalating certain things. Again, if it's a mailer and if it's something that's happening, that's looming, you may send something out, heightened urgency, but it could be something where you do a door knock because, hey, I don't know if you know this, but next week, or maybe you pick up the phone and call because you can deliver the heightened urgency in that channel more than maybe a postcard. So the big point here is all of this stuff is out there for you to use. All of it it's not necessary to do every single thing. It's about choosing the right channel, but it's about knowing your audience and doing your channel selection based on who that audience is and what they engage with. And then going back to our last session, once we choose the channel, we know who that channel is directed to. We know what our objective is. How do we use that channel and message to get the desired result, knowing that this audience is interested in these messages, and our job is to convey a sense of urgency around the need to act now. Right. So all of this, and you'll hear me say this time and time again, is about precision, precision, precision. So every dollar is working hard for you. And again, it's not going to be, I do this and I get it every single time, but it's certainly, you'll have a higher impact rate than you do today if you spend a little bit more time on the setup and less time on the tactics and focusing on the tactics, missing left and right. This is where the majority of your time should be spent understanding your audience, what they respond to, and communicating to them, to where you do the tactic, you know it's right, and you have a higher chance of conversion. And prioritizing the channel, we talked about it, largely dependent on your budget, your levels of comfort. I've asked many of you guys, embrace the speaking live opportunities. Some people love it, some people don't. I get it. Do you do better one-to-one, knowing that's tough to scale, one-to-many? What are your platforms to do that? We'll have more of these conversations, but in the strategy calls, we've shifted some of them away from Navigate, more about let's understand your market, let's understand you, and where you shine and what are your opportunities, which I think has been really helpful for a lot of people, and we'll continue to do that. And these are just kind of the simple channel stacks. I don't want to go into these in more detail. You guys can review these on your own time, but some of the stuff you guys already know. But it's about the sequencing. How do we stack these things? Not one thing, but a two-tier, three-tier, three-pronged approach might get you a higher impact and bring you closer to conversion. And I think this is a cool little matrix and visual for you guys to kind of think about how do you make this selection, and which actual type of channel based on your level of comfort, available time, and the audience that you have, right? If they're warm, if they're cold, if you do better face to face, what works well there. If you have a lot of budget, what might you consider? Will help you kind of make sense of these decisions, because I know if you're like a lot of people, it's just overwhelming to think about. So I wanted to put together this matrix to just help simplify it. And my final takeaway for you guys, it's not just about what you say, which again, it's incredibly important what you say, but it's about saying it in the right place, the right time, to the right person. When you can do that, and that's where the precision comes in, that's where you'll see the results. Yeah, not resistance. I don't think it's necessarily resistance we're seeing. We're just not seeing people show up, right? Our job is to get you an appointment. Our job is to get you to have someone say, hey, I'd love to talk again. And in order to do that, like anytime we converse, it's making sure we're talking to the people who we're for, not just talking to anybody. So I want you guys to leave just knowing that, how important that is. And hopefully this has conveyed that. So I'm going to stop here and we can open up the floor from some questions, because I'm sure you guys have a lot. Let me check the chat. As usually there's some in here. Oh, there's not a lot of questions today. I'll open up the floor. I know we have 10 minutes left. Happy to answer any questions you guys have. I know this is a lot coming at you, and I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. Some of the slides will help you just make sense of it, but this is not as complicated as it might look. It's just trying to simplify so you don't feel the need to have to invest dollars across all these different things. So knowing what you're good at, knowing who you're talking to and what they'll respond to, and narrowing it and choosing the most effective channel, and in over investing in those things that are delivering the results.
Is there a particular channel when you're moving into a new market that you suggest starting in?
Well, it depends, right? So I believe you're going to Orange County, correct?
Correct.
Good memory, right, Jonathan? So for
Very good.
you, you want to raise awareness right? So it's funny. Like I was thinking about you. I was speaking to someone about your, I'm going to call it predicament. It's an opportunity, right? Because everything is new, right?
Right.
So we might look at it as, wow, like I'm really starting a new business again in a new area. It's like if you were a small business, how would you grow your business, right? One thing I would do is some sort of like announcement that you were here and a little bit about you, right? So like people need to get comfortable with you. Now, you can't lean on the I have all this market expertise, I have deep roots in the community, but what you can lean on is maybe I've transacted a ton. Maybe there's certain things that are uh, agnostic of community, like how to deal with certain type of transactions, whether it's trusts, things that are of the environment that you are going into that might be topical or things that they might care about. Once you establish that, it's like, okay, well, how do I get that out in mass, right? So it could be doing paid advertising on Google. I wouldn't suggest it because a lot of people are actually doing that. Difficult to cut through. Um, it could be starting kind of small, and even though it's not scalable, you build relationships and one-to-one relationships. You humanize yourself, and it could be door knocking and really telling your story. Like, hey, listen, I'm Jonathan. I moved here from Raleigh. I have a ton of experience. I'm talking to homeowners just like you because I realize that everyone's doing all these other things and missing the mark. And where you start to learn about buyers, sellers is having real conversations, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just making this up on the spot,
For
but
sure.
well, as I say it, like I can certainly see that message resonating with people. You
Right.
may take some of these tensions that are happening. Hey, I'm walking around talking to homeowners because if you're like most of the people I talk to, regardless of where you live, you're probably wondering, like, how do I plan over the next 12 to 24 months? I've helped a ton of people, a ton of clients in the past think about their asset, right? And how do we make the right decision? So I'm going around. Listen, I could send stuff out here, but I wouldn't be able to have this one-to-one conversation, get feedback from you, and build these relationships, and that matters to my business. You ask
Yeah.
any of my clients, they'll say that. That's what I do. Great, Jonathan. Like real estate agents rarely do that. I'd love to talk to you again. Sure. Thanks. And maybe you
No, it's
follow up with something there. So again, I don't have an answer for you. I'm just saying if I was literally in your shoes, Brandon, and I'm in my area right now, how would I go about building a business?
Yep.
And I tell you, like, you could sit here and waste. This is again saying I don't have limitless money to spend on doing every single thing, right? Everything that's within reason and knowing what I do best. And for me, it is getting in front of people. And so, how do I create those opportunities on one-to-one? And then in those moments where you do that, you may set up hey, I'm going to be hosting something. If you know anybody who else is interested in this, please feel free to share that with them. And using those people in your network to help do the heavy lifting for you. I mean, that's the holy pendulum in marketing is like when you do it so well that they do it for you and you don't
Right.
have to spend the budget, right? That's what we're all getting to. But just being smart about, hey, this population, what's not being done when others are going right, maybe I can go left and have a bigger impact doing something that's just a bit unfamiliar, but it's more me, if you will.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep. Oh, come on. I know you guys have questions. Russell, I see you over there. It looks like your brain's spinning right now, chomping at the bit. No? Guess not. Man. Well,
No,
listen.
I used to door knock a lot, and I'm established in this area, but that advice you just gave is probably the best because once you door knock and you get a listing, then you've got something to tell the other people that you knocked the doors of that weren't interested at the time. But it's the face to face that makes all the difference. You ever visualize somebody on the phone that you're talking to, and then you meet them and they're nothing like what you thought they would look like or whatever? And
Yep.
so, yeah, I think that's great advice. And that's the last thing people
Yeah.
want to do. And it's so rewarding when you hit somebody, you make a connection.
Yeah, yeah, and to me the payoff is immediate. And if you're really good at it, you can pick up on an energy, a fear, something that might be happening in their, like, whatever it is, right? Like, you're in their environment, you see their home, you can, if your brain really works quickly, you can start to deduce certain things. If you have the tools to know the story before you go up and door knock, like, you can kind of lead the witness of some of these things. But to me, like, and again, it is not for everybody. In certain areas, sometimes you can't do it. But like, what I've found is that there's just this, in this age of everything being precise and perfect and like automated, and this, like, people are craving human connection and interaction, especially older clientele. And so when they see it, because it's so distant, they're like, they latch on to it, they gravitate to it. Because it reminds them of, like, the world is normal, right? Like, there are people, they're not just bots. Um, the other thing too, this is not for everybody. I tell people, sometimes the best thing to do, whether you're cold calling these conversations, is say the thing that they least expect, right? Like, I was telling a realtor when they're like, oh, well, I don't like telling people I'm a realtor because they have this impression of realtor. And I was like, I would actually lean the heaviest into that, right? If I met somebody and be like, oh, I'm a realtor. And before you go off and say, oh my God, you're a realtor, I know how annoying we can be. And using that as a source of strength, getting out ahead of it. There is this, for those of you who've seen this movie with this rapper Eminem, it's called 8 Mile. One of the things that I thought was great was that when he was doing this battle with his opponent, if you will, he neutralized his opponent's argument by saying all the things that he knew that that person was going to say to bring him down, and he owned it. I already know I'm this, and this. Now what? And so now the guy was sitting there like, well, everything I was going to say to break you down, you literally just undercut me, and I just don't have any. So whether I'm negotiating, whether I'm talking, sometimes I just say the awkward thing to get out ahead of it because you frame it on your terms, or I say the elephant in the room that everybody's thinking and inject some levity into it. So, like, diffuse the tension. It's okay. I'm okay with it. I know how we are. And they're like, oh, okay. Right. And so they're like, this guy
Well,
has a little bit of personality.
when I started in the business, I worked with this lady named Cleo, and she was very
Yeah.
dainty, sophisticated, wore her hair up, and just an interesting person together, totally. And I was on the phone. I was brand new. I was on the phone with a client, and I was apologizing. I screwed something up or whatever. And she said, "Next time you do something wrong like that, don't say too much. Just say, 'I am an idiot. I can't believe that I did that.'" And the person says, "No, hey, relax. It's
Hey,
not that
relax.
bad." Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how
Right.
it works.
Yeah. And you'll find, I think, I mean, I'll say this here because I know we're coming up on time. Like, you'll find a lot of times that, like, people give you grace. Like, people, it's okay. The things we're scared about, like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't have the answer. Like, you don't have to always have the answer. You don't have to always be perfect. Mistakes happen, right? And if someone's going to crucify you, or that's probably the client that you don't want anyway. But if
Yeah.
you can just find the humor and the calm in that supposed storm and just maintain, people respect that if you're composed. Um, and it's okay. You'll find that it's okay. I think a lot of times we psych ourselves out in those moments, and we don't do ourselves. It's not helping things. So I know it's kind of off topic for what the session was today, but these are just kind of some nuggets when you think about going about your day to day. Right? Think about what you do well. There's a power in the humanity. People are normal. And people, no one gets it right all the time. But what they don't do all the time is they don't show up. They're not consistent. They're not committed to what they're saying they're doing. Um, And that's where the values and everything that your business is about. That's what you want to communicate. Do the things that the others don't do. It's okay to mess up. This is where you don't. This is where you actually get it right all the time. People respect that. So anyway, I will let you guys go. Thank you for attending today's session. And again, next session will be really interesting. I'm going to bring in a thought partner from the outside, someone I'm working with that's helping me make sense demystifying digital. So hopefully you guys will get a ton out of it. And if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. Thank you guys.
All right, take care, thanks.
Cheers.